Module 3, Career Theory and Practice. The Holland Code is a widely used assessment that is given mainly in universities as well as different work environments. This is a very interactive approach that establishes links between various workplace contexts as well as individuals' interests and personality and career choice rationale. There are 6 different areas of the Holland Code we call the RIASEC model. This includes realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Let's break each of these down. Realistic individual, or the doers, enjoy fixing and repairing things, using tools, working with equipment, usually working with their hands as well, building things, product-driven, and really desire a clear line of authority. Sometimes you find students interested in this area who are in the engineering or construction or even architecture fields. The second is investigative. We consider these the thinkers. They enjoy conducting research, solving problems, exploring theory, and brainstorming new ideas. They like working independently so that they can really focus on the work they're doing. Sometimes you find students who enjoy psychology or sociology, history, enjoying this type of environment. Artistic are the third. These are the creators, which doesn't always mean that you have to be artistic to fall in this category. In general, artistic types are self-expressive. They might enjoy designing or creating, writing, composing, performing. They appreciate flexibility, are very idealistic, and like investigative types, they also enjoy working independently. You might find students who fall into this category, possibly in the music field, art field, architecture, or even game design. The fourth category is social. These are the helpers. These individuals love to help, encourage, teach, mentor, counsel others, guide. And unlike investigative and artistic types, this type prefers working collaboratively in teams. They love supporting people, and they try to look for careers that are relationship-based. You might find students in this category be very interested in psychology, possibly education, social work, nursing, etc. The fifth type is enterprising. These are the persuaders. They love debating ideas, selling things, persuading and influencing others, managing people and projects. They sometimes are able to take risk and also are competitive. You find a lot of athletes that fall into this category, along with individuals who really enjoy business. And the final type are conventional. These are the organizers. They enjoy organizing information, writing reports, operating computers, managing data, making charts and graphs, and they prefer very practical work. Sometimes students in this category might fall into accounting, computer science, and many other data-driven careers. O-Net is a fabulous place to do career exploration, especially when it is attached to the Holland Code. It is a very useful tool in that you can search by code as well as careers in general. For instance, when I log into O-Net, I am able to type any career up in the search bar. In this case, I will type in accounting to see what comes up and to see the careers that align with that particular title. When I type this in, you will notice all of the different career types, including accountants and auditors. We can look at the tasks, the technology and skills, work activities, work context, job zone, training and credentials, skills, knowledge, and abilities, as well as their interest type. So in this case, very similar to our RIASEC model, this individual is very conventional, enterprising, and investigative. Someone who is very detail-oriented, enjoys leading others and managing projects, as well as solving complex problems. In addition, you can look at workplace values, styles, wage and employment trends, as well as related occupations. So for instance, students who are looking for something maybe a little bit different than this, they can see related jobs that have a lot of similarities. You might also notice the little sun icon. Any job that has this particular sun is called a Bright Outlook job, meaning there are lots of jobs being created in this field, which is very hopeful for graduates who will be graduating soon. Another way to search is by going to the O-Net data. Once you click on the O-Net data, you will be able to search by an exact RIASEC code. For instance, let's take someone who their initial code is artistic. When you log into this particular page, you're able to choose 1, 2, or 3 of their Holland codes. In this case, we will choose artistic, enterprising, and social. The jobs that come up have this category and are able to be narrowed down by an interest type. When you remove one of the types, you are able to get a longer list of occupations. This will help students to explore further different occupations that could be a good fit based on their RIASEC type. You will also notice the job zone and the interest code on the left. Job zones in the 2 and 3 areas are associate degree as well as non-college degrees. The jobs in the 4s are a bachelor degree, and the job in the 5 are graduate programs. You'll also notice under the interest code where each of the types fall. While most of these types will start with artistic, as we have referenced, there are some professions that may not. You might see some that start with S, R, etc., and be able to navigate that and the differences. We encourage you to use O-Net with your students to provide this really good overlook of different careers as well as RIASEC types. To help students first establish their RIASEC type, we encourage you to have them do Pathway U. Pathway U is a free assessment for all UNC Charlotte majors, and it also helps explore interests based on the RIASEC model. In addition to interests, it explores personality, values, as well as workplace preferences. When all 4 of these align, that is when we get the sweet spot. It is the sweet spot type of career that we are looking for. When you go to our website, you can click Take Pathway U and then log in with your NinerNet and password. When you come to My Journey page, this is where you can begin. You can launch the assessment and take 4 short assessments that cover all 4 of these areas. Let me show you my personal results. You can see my interests, values, personality, and workplace preferences. You can also take a deeper dive into each of these sections so that you really have a good understanding of what each of these means. Let's take a look at the career matches. You can go into any industry and be able to look by bachelor's degree, graduate degree, as well as very strong and strong career matches. In this case, I've chosen human services, and we're starting to navigate different careers that would be a very strong fit based on my results. You're also able to favorite, and this will save these occupations to be able to look at later. Let's go into a particular job. In this case, health educator. There are many things you can do within this profile. You can review the job, description, abilities, knowledge, and skills. You can also look at different programs, including those that happen here at UNC Charlotte. This is really good for students who do not know what they want to major in yet, but are very interested in a particular role. They can also watch a short video on this career, a day in the life of this type of professional, look at salary information by local and state, and also see if it's a Bright Outlook job. Are there jobs being created in this field? In addition, they can see whether this job requires an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or higher, which is very helpful for a lot of students who are looking at possibly going to graduate school. Pathway U is also connected to O-Net, and so a lot of the information from O-Net is pulled into Pathway U. So it's a very strong connection, and it's very easy to go between both platforms. Let's play the interest party game. So imagine walking into a room to find different RIASEC groups of people, those who associate with realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Which groups would you enjoy speaking with first, second, and third? Consider the following questions. How does your top interest area relate to your degree? How does your top interest area relate to your job? And do you have any hobbies that complement your interest area? Take time to reflect upon these questions.
Crumbles and chance. So when we think about career development theory, it really started with the concepts of trait and factor, where we would assess an individual, understand their traits, their skills, who they are as a person, and then match them with potential occupations that are out there. You see a little bit about this with Holland's theory, in that they're getting a sense of your personality as Holland describes it, and orchestrating you around a sense of how do you match with occupations that also have these certain personalities. Crumboltz is the first individual who came across and said, look, matching skills, traits, personalities, those are all well and said and good, and they do make sense and they are of value. But what he adds is the sense of how our experiences in our lives and how we experience our lives and those environments around us also play a major part in how we determine what career paths or career functions we see ourselves going into, or that are counseled out from us, or that we intend to move forward with. So with Crumboltz, there are essentially three aspects that he talks about. The first one is about the ability, a person's ability. Now, this is where he talks about ability in terms of genetics and whatnot, but it's really about practice, our sense of, if I can just keep practicing something, I can get the ability to do those particular tasks or that type of career path or whatever it might be. So for example, I mentioned math. Math is not one of those things that I love to do, but I can definitely practice and get very high in math and get those skills and that ability. But that doesn't mean my satisfaction, my engagement, and my interest are going to go any higher than what they are right now. Same thing goes for guitar. There's individuals out there that can teach any one of us to play the guitar. Now, some of us, it might take just an hour to get a song going. Some of us, it might take months, maybe even years. But there's a point at which that we can get the ability to be able to play the guitar. But again, it goes back to that engagement level and that interest level and where we fall in that particular continuum. So with Crumboltz, ability is there, and it can be attained through practice. The second, and I think the most important aspect of Crumboltz's theory of career development is around the learning experiences that we have around us and how it actually impacts the sense of ourself, how we see ourselves, how we see the world, and even our career decisions. So let me give you two examples. First example is for those individuals who say, I'm not really good at math, or I got a D in math, so that therefore I can't do it. Well, what happens with those individuals, generally speaking, is that once they're hit and faced with that barrier, that D or that C, or things are just not, they're not picking it up as fast as they can based on how the faculty is teaching it, they immediately think and sense that, okay, therefore I can't do any math because I'm not doing it well here based on how I'm being taught, the experience of me being taught with this faculty member. It impacts how they feel about themselves around math, and it will impact the direction they decide to take in terms of certain career paths, i.e., if there's a lot of math, I better not go in that direction because I've already been experienced with not being able to do it with what I've seen so far. Now, another example is with myself. So long time ago in 5th grade, I remember I had a teacher, Mrs. Calvert, who made us all do many different types of speeches. So we did a demonstration speech, a persuasion speech, and many other different types. And I remember getting up and doing my first presentation, and I was nervous and I wasn't sure how I was going to go. I delivered the presentation. I had, smiles, laughter in a good way. My professor or my teacher gave me an A, and, I felt pretty good, like I could do this. So when the next speech came up, I did it all again, got A's, got great impact or stuff from the audience, and it made me feel good, whereas I wanted to do more and more and more. I was getting A's. I could see myself doing very, very well. I carried that through high school, where I found myself doing speeches all the time. When I got into college, I took public speaking courses. I took courses where you had to do presentations, and I got better grades. I got that same kind of, impact from the audience, to the point now where when I started looking for jobs, and even any jobs that I might be looking for now, don't worry, I'm not looking for another job. It's important and of value to me to have a portion of that job where I get the opportunity to present to audiences or students or whoever, because not only do I know and feel that I do well, but it's also exciting and satisfying and makes me engaged in my work. And so that learning experience from all the way back from the 5th grade, where I got in front of people and did speeches, carried with me throughout my whole entire lives without me even realizing it until I started learning about career theory, where it became a very central thing for me as I think about my career and the types of occupations and tasks that I feel good and engaged around doing. So when we think about learning experiences, what we want to do with our students is provide them as many different learning experiences as possible so that they can see, do I like doing something or not? So even those individuals who may say, gosh, I had this learning experience with math, I didn't like it, I did not do well, giving them more opportunities to make sure that it's not just they don't like it, or is it just that one style of learning did not match with their ways of learning new material, giving them those options to discover more opportunities to see how it might impact them. So these learning experiences, this is why college has so many different types of courses, different types of faculty that come at things in different angles. We have clubs and organizations, leadership thing. All these activities is to give our students the opportunity to connect, belong, and find those levels of engagement and motivation that will naturally lead towards different types of work environments, occupations, and of course, specific tasks that they may enjoy doing or things that they're going to stay away from. And then the final part of Krumboldt's theory is this opportunity to understand how the environment around us, so a little bit different than the learning experiences where we have agency as individuals, the environment around us can also impact our career preferences. So when you think back on 9/11, what we started to see after 9/11 is an uptick in individuals who wanted to go into career paths that quote mattered to them. Social impact, nonprofits, giving back to humanities, things where it's very important for them to have a connection to what they're doing based on how they felt around 9/11. We saw that again with COVID and how people experienced COVID happening around them and how it played a major impact in their career choices and occupational choices. And we start to see this work-life, however you want to call it, balance becoming a huge factor in everything. And so the environment around us can really impact us in many different ways that we've never thought of before. Same thing goes with the Great Recession. Right after that, you started seeing people move towards career paths that were, quote, much more stable than those that were greatly impacted around that time, the Great Recession time. So the environment's big. Let me give you a specific example that's around a student. So I remember this student long time ago came into my office and she was studying fashion design and she loved, designing new clothing, and she actually stitched some things together and she had a big old, portfolio, and she loved it. And I asked her, okay, great. So that means you're wanting to go into the fashion world and be a designer and go into, Louis Vuitton or whoever else is out there in those times. And she looked at me and she said, heck no. I don't want to live in New York or Milan or any of those kind of places. I don't want to work for those kind of companies because it's fast-paced, it's cutthroat, it's just not me. But I enjoy doing fashion design and designing new clothing. And she came into my office because she was in a dilemma. She really loved studying that stuff, but she didn't want to work in that industry, that world, that sector. And so she was lost. She didn't know what to do. So we spent a couple, 2-3 sessions talking it through. We did the values check. We did everything that a career coach would do with an individual in that circumstance. And so she went on her merry way, and she maybe came back a month or two later, and she was super positive, super different. And she said, I figured it out. I know exactly what I want to do, and I'm already moving forward. And it was interesting because I was racking my brain to figure out what the hell did I do that got her to that point. And it wasn't about me. It was just about the environment around her. And so I asked her, how did you come to that decision? Tell me more about that. And she said, look, my brother, he's dealing with a divorce, and I wanted to help him. And so I started geeking out on that stuff, reading about it, trying to give him resources and whatnot. And she found that she just loved reading about legal precedents and all these different things. And it led her to understanding about paralegal and a paralegal certificate. And so she said, I love that stuff. It was very much me. It's very cut and dry. And I found myself engaged, and boom, she signed herself up for a certificate. And 20 years later, she's still a paralegal in a major organization. And all of it came from the environmental factors around her that impacted her rather than a career assessment or a specific class or whatever it might be. So Crumbles really wants us to pay attention to our lives and those highlights and those things around us. And so not only can we gain the ability, and we want to push through that, but we have to pay attention to our motivations and engagement. But more importantly, the learning experience, how we see ourselves in the world and the environment around us, play a huge part in helping our individuals find their next direction. So when we think about career planning, it's all about a new paradigm. It's no longer this linear thing where we go from high school to college and college to job and magically everything works out. Now it's about this new understanding that, my gosh, we are twisting and turning in our lives, and our jobs are changing, our career paths are changing, our sense of self, who we are from the day we graduated college to the day that we're 25 years in our career. All of these things continuously impact us. And what's important for individuals, what's important for college students to understand is that not do we just want to figure out like what's wrong, what are we missing, but what's right, what's around us, what are our strengths, and how do we leverage those strengths towards new things, and understanding that we don't have to stick with the same thing over and over and over again. We can keep expanding and developing ourselves to many new directions. We can study psychology and go into banking. We can study finance and go into a nonprofit. Major does not equal career. What's really important is what's right in front of you. What's the journey that you're taking? How are you learning to learn? How are you building those competencies rather than just taking 120 credit hours of courses and expecting, boom, that equals a job? What college and higher education is really about for hundreds of years is about developing ourselves, because the world around us changes. The world of work changes dramatically, and it will dramatically change in the next 10 to 15 years. What we have to figure out is, how do we make those decisions? How do we build those competencies so that we can connect to different things as that world around us is changing? So the last thing I want to mention is about career maturity. So I love this concept. It's kind of a quasi-theory, but it's an interesting way to look at the different dimensions that a student might present with us. And so you got 4 of them in front of you. And what these are all about is us checking in to see where our student, the person that we're working with, currently stands on those different spectrums. So for example, what is their level of concern for the future? Meaning, are they even thinking of that next step? Are they even thinking about why and how college connects in with their overall career? Or are they just in the here and now, loving college and not thinking about like the connection towards after college? And then also, are they feeling hopeful about it? Are they positive? Or are they super, stressed or anxious or whatever it might be? So the concern for the future is an interesting spectrum to get a sense of where are they in their level of career maturity. Sense of control, so career control. This is an easy one. Are they making the decisions, or is somebody else making the decisions? So the classic lawnmower parent or helicopter parent, those, generally speaking, are the ones making the decisions for their student, more so than the student having self-agency and making their own path. And so it's important for us when we're talking with a student to get a sense of, who are all those friends and families around them? It's not bad if they're providing them advice, but how much control do they feel that they have in their own decisions and their own pathways? Big, big, big. How many people do you know that just say, gosh, I hate my job, or I wish I would have studied something different, or I can't wait to retire so I can do what I actually love? That's that sense of control. Is it in your own control, or is it somebody else's control? And then the final 2 are around curiosity and confidence. So do they have a good healthy level of curiosity about learning about new pathways? I'll give you an example. So, I've oftentimes deal with those who want to go to medical school, and they are very driven to only medical school and not anything else. And the question becomes is what if medical school is off the table for them? Have they explored other things? It doesn't mean give up on medical school. It's just a matter of that what if sort of thing. And curiosity means delving and helping them understand that medical school is just one aspect of a giant thing called healthcare. And so curiosity is one of those things to say, are they exploring all kinds of options and understanding the pathway that they're thinking about fully, or are they a one-track mind, this is all it is, and not planning for B, C, and D, if you will. And the same thing with confidence is, do they have that belief that when they are hit with barriers, when they're hit with roadblocks, that they have the grit to get over it, to move past that particular barrier. So if they didn't get into this one med school, could they get into the other one? If they didn't get into medical school right now, could they get into it next time? Or if they didn't get in medical school at all, but they still loved healthcare and helping people, how could they do that if it's not medical school? So do they have the ability to problem solve and be able to get over those barriers and roadblocks that we all face in our own career? So the Career Fantasy Line is a great activity that you can do in a classroom. You can do it as a workshop, or you just have your student individually do this and they bring it back to you. It's a great creative way to get students to think about, the different types of jobs and career paths that they've always fantasized about over the years, as well as their actual jobs and internships, part-time jobs that they've held. The goal with this activity is to really get a sense of what themes and patterns you're finding from their lives. So again, as Krumboltz is talking about in his theory, it's about the highlights of their lives, the stories that they have. And what we're trying to do is connect the dots of all of these chapters of their book so that we can use that to project a student forward on some possibilities that they could do with their own career. So when you're looking at the Career Fantasy Line, obviously you see that it's a timeline from birth to current. And what we ask people to do is on one side or on the bottom, depending on how your fantasy line is situated, you want them to list out all the jobs and career paths that they've ever fantasized about throughout their entire life. So as far back as they can think. So this means that if you fantasize about being a fire person or a cowboy or a cowgirl or whatever it is, that should go on this fantasy line as well. And we currently see that people still fantasize about doing different things in their own career. So everything goes on there in a rough timeline. For the really creative types, a lot of times in a workshop, you might find them using magazines or online clippings to demonstrate their different career paths. And then on the right-hand side are the actual careers that a person held. So thinking as far back to their first paid position or significant volunteer experience, whatever you decide to do with this, all the way through what they currently do right now. So the fantasy line career fantasy line you see on your left is an actual representation of mine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through what you're seeing here. And then generally speaking, what I would do with a client, so what I'm going to do for myself is I'm going to pick out any themes and patterns from this demonstration and questions that I might decide I wanted to ask this client named Patrick about their career fantasy line. So this is, again, all about helping create conversation, finding those themes and patterns to give students options and ideas that they might not have thought about moving forward. All right, so on the fantasy side, as far back as I could remember, I had wanted to be a Ghostbuster. So if you've ever seen the movie Ghostbusters, it was really big at the time, it was exciting, and I wanted to be a Ghostbuster, so that's definitely on there. And then since then, or right after that, I wanted to be a medical doctor, specifically a pediatrician, and saw myself being a pediatrician all the way through maybe my sophomore year of college, where I found out that I actually don't like biology, don't like chemistry, don't like to see blood, and felt that, okay, if I always wanted to be a pediatrician and suddenly that came crashing down, now what? And it was immediately around that time, about the end of sophomore year, that I said, okay, well, I got to do something. And I love history. I've always loved history. I like teaching. I like people. So maybe I'll be a history teacher. And I distinctly remember going to the education department and saying, hey, I want to be a history teacher in high school. How do I make that happen? They said, well, you're going to have to stay another year and a half in college to make that happen. And I immediately thought to myself, what the heck? I'm not doing that. And I immediately stopped and rethought and figured out, okay, if I wanted to be a medical doctor, what about that I want to be? And it was really about helping people. And so I said, well, I actually want to be a counselor. I want to help people with their mental wellness and whatnot. So I fantasized about being a counselor. And then soon after that, I fantasized about being a consultant, traveling around, helping people solve problems. And then right now, I fantasize about being a CIA agent. And then on the actual career side, what I have is the first job I've ever held was a soccer referee. Soon after that, I worked in a family shoe shop, doing different things. And then I worked at Eckerd's and Kmart and a frame shop during high school and college. So with frame shop, I put together the frames, made the wood frames, did all that kind of stuff. Eckerd's and Kmart was just customer service. And then I did that through all of undergrad, both jobs. And when I got into graduate school for counseling, I was a graduate assistant in the counseling center. That led to our full-time job as an assistant director in the Career Center, then director, and then adjunct faculty. I've done consulting for many years, and now I currently am the associate dean in undergraduate education. So you can see from this demonstration, I have my fantasy jobs on there, and I have my actual career jobs on there. So if I'm looking at this as a career coach, I'm going to start to draw out some of the patterns and themes that I'm noticing from there. So the first pattern and theme is I see, medical doctor, I see teacher, I see counselor, I see consultant. So obviously this person must love people in some regards. So there's a people aspect in there. They like that human service and support, sorts of roles. And this might be something that if I found this pattern in the theme, I'm going to say, hey, Patrick, this is what I'm seeing. Am I correct in my assumption? Is that something that's very interesting to you? And I might say yes. And so if you think about Holland and how some career paths drift towards people versus data and things, all of a sudden we're starting to see some opportunities really kind of sprout out, if you will. So if I'm looking at this patterns and themes, I see that I was in the career services world for a long time and helping them. And then I'm looking at consulting and thinking to myself, okay, so what are you consulting about? It was about career services, higher education, student success. And so there's a lot of that flavor in there. All right. Other themes and patterns. So I'm seeing a lot of leadership in there. So obviously being a director, being a consultant, associate dean, there's some directing, leadership sorts of roles in there. So I might ask the client, do you like leadership? Is that something that's important to you? Do you find yourself, really thriving in that type of role? And so that might be something that we talk to them about. Now, so as I look at some of the questions that might come up, looking at their life, I might want to get a sense of more about their interests and their areas of interest from this demonstration. So the first question I might have is, what about that CIA agent? I mean, I notice you're fantasizing about that. Is that something of interest to you? Do you want to go into that kind of career path next? And I might respond that, hey, right now I'm just reading books that have CIA agents in them, and it's very exciting, and so I'm fantasizing about it, and you told me to put it on there. So it might not be anything of importance, but it's something that I would ask about. When I'm looking in there, I might see that a theme and pattern. So I fantasized about being a counselor, and I became a counselor. So that's really cool. I fantasized about being a consultant, and I became a consultant in my career. And so what I'm noticing is that I'm fantasizing about things, but then I'm making it happen for myself. And that's that grit. That's that perseverance, if you will. That's very important for a person. So I might look in there and say questions when I'm looking at the career paths, the assistant director all the way through. What things did I like the most and the least? Because if I'm in your office right now with career concerns, it might be around, hey, I'm in this midlife crisis. I'm not sure what I should do with my career next. And so let's ask them, what did you like best about your jobs? What did you like least? And we want to get those patterns and themes as well. So this is a simple demonstration of how you might use a career fantasy line. Again, it goes back to getting all the stuff that they've done in their lives, put it on paper in some creative way so that it gives you the opportunity to ask them questions, get to know their lives, understand the highlights, those chapters of their novel as a way to project forward on what might be next for their career path.